In this Friday video, we're going to take a look at the Arizona poll from last week, but we're also going to look a little bit here at this New Jersey governor's primary, and that's coming up Tuesday, June 10th. So let's get into it. We've got a recent poll here from Survey USA on candidate favorables, but this whole race looks like it's going to be anticlimactic. 6 months to a year ago, it looked like it was going to be Mikey Sherrill for the Dems against Jack Ciattarelli for the Republicans. And now, right before the election, it looks like nothing's changed. Sherrill looks like she's the more moderate establishment choice. She's got political and military experience, and in a crowded field, she hasn't really wavered much support. And for the GOP, Ciattarelli, who's in his third consecutive run for governor, he surprised everybody back in 21, where he came pretty close to knocking off incumbent Phil Murphy. So this should be a good showdown, but let's see what we've got here for this poll from Survey USA. Well, there's actually not a whole lot of interesting data here. This confirms that Sherrill has the highest favorability rating at 41%, 29 unfavorable. And I think this race could have been more interesting if it was an establishment candidate against a progressive one. But when you've kind of got a 3-3 split and without any runoffs, all it takes is maybe 25 to 30% and you're going to be the nominee. So through some of the rest of the data here, it says between 30 and 42% of the general electorate voters say they're unfamiliar with each of the 6 candidates. That's a pretty big chunk, but that has come down over the months. I think there's a lot of voters that just don't want to pay attention to what's happening for a primary and with a crowded field. They'll take a closer look in about 3 or 4 months. Now we've got Jack Ciattarelli here. Now he did get the Trump endorsement. I don't think he needed it, but he did have a little bit of competition on his side as well for more conservative challengers. His favorability is 40 to 36, but with Trump voters, it's 63 to 19. So I think Ciattarelli's name is going to be familiar with New Jersey voters. Given this is his third run, this might either look pathetic or it looks like he knows what he's doing by now. Now the sample size in this poll was 576 likely voters. Big margin of error here at plus or minus 6.1. Let's look a little closer at this race. Again, the primary is already coming up. It's on Tuesday, the 10th. It'd be nice if we could do a stream that day, so stay tuned and see if that happens. But the quick background here is Governor Phil Murphy is term limited after 2 terms. And the Dems did not coalesce around one candidate. They've got a 6-way race here. 3 that are more establishment and 3 that are more progressive. Now there's a little bit of range here, but none of them are completely no-name candidates. And we've got all the endorsements here, and pretty much all of them do have a good chunk of their own. Of course, Governor Phil Murphy is going to have declined to endorse. Same with the U.S. senators. But if we look at the polling here, for the Dems, Mikey Sherrill, she's led every one of them, going back to last year. But she can still barely get over 30%. And 4 of the other 5 candidates are in double digits, according to the recent poll from Emerson. But still, we've got 24% undecided. Now down here, we've got the campaign financing. And all of them, except for Sean Spiller, they've raised at least 6 or 7 million. So there's a lot going on here. And then we've got the debates for the primary. Got a nice YouTube link right here if you feel like going back and watching any of these. Now, I haven't closely followed this race because for a while I thought it was going to be Sherrill, and it looks like it is. But there's going to be a little bit of distinction between these candidates. But at the same time, there's not going to be a whole lot. They're going to position themselves as being the resistance to Trump. And on the other side, it's kind of the opposite story. Ciattarelli here first ran in 2017. He was the runner-up in the primary. 4 years later, he was the nominee, and he lost a close one to Phil Murphy. But some people consider him to be a little too moderate or establishment, so he does have some challenges from his right. But it looks like they haven't really been able to gain enough momentum. There are some endorsements here. Ciattarelli probably has the most. Then we've got decline to endorse. Looks like former governor Chris Christie. But here's the polling. Ciattarelli clearly leading everybody. He's in the 40 to 50% range. The more conservative Bill Spadea is down there at about 20. Another 20% undecided. Under that, Ciattarelli has raised the most by far. So he's not going to win this with 80 or 90% of the vote, but he could pull it off with a highly convincing majority of 60, maybe even up to 70%. And then we've got the debates down here. And then after that, we've got the general election. Now, there's no polling yet, but we're going to start to see that come in after next week. It's currently rated as lean D from the 3 major outlets. That was also my most recent rating as well. It's easy to say the Dems are going to be favored given how blue the state is. But there are some positive signs here for the Republicans. Maybe they can make it competitive. And if they do have a great night and the state is in the mood for some change, then they're going to be hoping for that upset. But that might be a bit of an uphill climb considering Trump is in the White House. And again here, Trump recently endorsed Ciattarelli. Maybe he comes back to South Jersey and does another rally. That's a place that has moved in his direction over the past decade. But we also saw in the last election for for president. A lot of Hispanic support moved toward the right, so it'll be interesting to see which parts of the state and which demographics move in which direction. Polling was pretty bad here in 21, but you'd think the lean of the state should be enough for the Dems to at least hold this seat, but we'll see what happens. Let's move on to Arizona governor. Now this poll came out late last week. It's from Noble Predictive Insights, and this race is a lot more one-sided. The Dems have their incumbent, Katie Hobbs, in office, assuming she's going to stick it out and run again. There's going to be no drama on that side, so everybody's going to be looking at the Republican side. And last time, we all know what happened between Kari Lake and Katie Hobbs. It was a close one, but it looks like Lake came up just short. She was probably too controversial for that more establishment electorate in Maricopa County. So here we've got a sample size of 1,026 registered voters. For the Republican primary, it's 426. So we've basically got a two-way race this time. It's between Karen Taylor Robson and Andy Biggs. Biggs is leaving the U.S. House to run for this seat, and Taylor Robson lost to Kari Lake last time in the primary. She was considered a little bit too establishment for those primary voters. Now she's had a few years, maybe she's undergone a transformation, and Donald Trump has co-endorsed both of these two candidates. And we've seen some different data in different polls, but here, Robson is at 24%, Biggs is at 17%. They also have Charlie Kirk, who is also pulling in 17%. He's actually not running for this seat. And the state treasurer, Kimberly Yee, is at 6%, and she's also running for a different office. So it's really between Taylor Robson and Biggs. 37% undecided. There's a lot of time left here. Anything could change. It says here, given Biggs and Kirk's shared ideological profile and overlapping favorability ratings among GOP voters, it's likely that some of Kirk's supporters will consolidate behind Biggs. And Kirk has endorsed Biggs, so that could be a boost. There's more data here. We're not going to read all of it. But it says Taylor Robson, she enjoys the highest favorability rating among Republicans, plus 38. And then down here we've got a table with some candidate quality breakdown. There's a lot of overlap. There's nothing too dramatic to point out here except for this one here. This is experience in elected office. Biggs is ahead by 30 points there, 40 to 10. So there's a whole lot of other dynamics here, loyalty to Trump, the usual issues, etc. But the juicy part here is going to be the head-to-head matchup in the general election. Well, here it is. We've got Katie Hobbs against Taylor Robson. She's up by just 2 points, 41 to 39, 17 undecided. And if it's Hobbs against Biggs, it's also a 2-point lead for Hobbs, 40 to 38, another 17 undecided. This doesn't really answer a whole lot of questions, but it does tell us that there's likely to be a competitive race here. Hobbs could go down or she could hold on. Both major political parties have won statewide offices here. Even in the last election, Trump carried the state comfortably for president, but Ruben Gallego, the Democrat, won in the Senate. So this is going to be a pretty big race next year, but there's a little bit more data we can take a look at. Here we've got, do you believe that Arizona is on the right track or headed in the wrong direction? Well, right now it's tied 50 to 50, and you can see that's narrowed up since the beginning of Katie Hobbs' term. They even have the prior Doug Ducey administration on here. So if it's 50-50 right now and headed in the right direction, that's going to be something that could help Hobbs. Now, I know there's some stories out there about Hobbs vetoing some bills that might technically be popular, but that might not matter in a year from now when the general election is starting to heat up. So all these links will be down below in the description. You could also click right here and take a look at any one of these other questions. There's a ton here, but if you go down here, you could also get the demographic breakdown. It's a massive amount of data here. The one I'm going to point out is going to be independence. They are slightly underwater on the right track, wrong track at 47 right and 53 wrong. But let's move on to one more thing with some more Arizona data. Now this came out yesterday, and this also goes more into the trajectory of the state. We've got what we just saw here with independents, but the surprising thing about this state is it's almost the same for both Democrats and Republicans. GOP is at +4, Dems at +2. Once you add all that up, that comes out to the perfectly even 50-50. It's hard to know what to make of that data, given its divided government. Dems are likely to focus on how they like the governor. Republicans likely to focus on how they control the state legislature. Meanwhile, independents are a little bit less enthusiastic about it. So you rarely see this kind of an even overlap, but we've got it here in Arizona. But here's some more data. This asks about the preferred party to lead Arizona. Here the Republicans have the slight edge by 4, 44 to 40. 16% say neither. And on the generic congressional ballot, it's a +2 advantage for the GOP, 40 to 38. So that's a bit better of a sign here for the Republicans. Then if we go down here, here's Trump's favorability rating. And look at this, it also perfectly evens out. It's 48 favorable, 48 unfavorable. But here with independents, he's 12 points underwater. So that complicates things further. That's going to be a good sign for the Dems. It's tough to really say what's going to happen here. Trump won the state by 5.5 points. And prior to that, it looked like the state, especially in the Maricopa suburbs, were moving to the left. but the last election kind of put the brakes on most of those trends. The last thing I'm going to point out here is the favorability ratings for other Arizona politicians. Here we've got Senators Mark Kelly and Ruben Gallego. They're at plus 15 and 19 respectively. That looks a lot better than Trump's rating. And even Governor Katie Hobbs is at plus 13. So there's a lot of mixed signals here. The favorability ratings look like they favor the Dems, but the overall party preference looks like it favors the Republicans. However, the head-to-head matchups, it's pretty much dead even. So everything looks kind of 50-50 in this state at the moment. It could easily be different in 2 months or 6 months or by the time the next election rolls around. Some of that could easily depend on the different issues for voters. And this is where I'm going to end the video. Take a look at all this data if you'd like, but let me know in the comments, what do you think about anything that's going on in New Jersey? Is it going to be Cheryl and Schittarelli? And how about how Arizona looks perfectly 50-50 once you look at all the different data? Let me know what you think down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.